Welcome to Stories from the Center of the Universe, the podcast about the human experience.
Roger Devine, welcome to the Center of the Universe.
Thank you for having me, Paul. It's the first time I've been in the Center of the Universe.
Yeah, I'm in it once a week. I have to say it's a pretty fun place to be.
Okay, it's connected everywhere.
I think a lot of my friends would tell me that I'm maybe delusional, that I'm in the Center of the Universe for about an hour every week. But here we are. If you believe it, it must be true, right?
Mm-hmm. I do remember a quote from the writer Anne Lamott, who struggled with many self-esteem issues, but described herself as feeling like she's the small lump of fecal matter at the center of the universe, that the entire universe revolves around.
Even though she may be a small bit of fecal matter.
Yes, the entire universe revolves around her. So
that's a lovely sort of, yeah. I'm not sure which way to take that.
Well, for those of us who occasionally struggle with self-esteem, it's occasionally a laugh line.
Yeah, I don't understand the people that don't struggle with self-esteem from time to time. I think we all do, right? The imposter syndrome, I think, impacts all of us from time to time. But we're not here to talk about all of that. You and I connected. There's a service out there that says, hey, people that are interested in being guests on podcasts, here's some podcasts you should reach out to. And so you guys did. I say no probably to 80% of them. I think you're my third or fourth, and I've been getting a lot of emails lately. But your associate wrote a lovely email to me. It got my attention right away, and I think I reached out to call her, and then you answered her phone.
Yeah, well, phones get rerouted around our small company quite a lot. But I did pass on your compliments to Piper, so she knows. Thank you, and I appreciate that you recognize that work for her. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's set the stage here. You've grown up. You've spent a lot. I shouldn't say grown up. You've spent a lot of time in big cities across this country. And when we were talking last week, the diversity of those places is kind of mind-boggling to me. So just kind of share where you were and what those experiences were like in each of those places.
Well, my mom raised me with big wings and shallow roots. And so I've moved around a lot. And, sort of started out in Texas. I grew up there, a lovely place to grow up in the 70s. And moved out from there actually to New York City, which was like flipping the record over, completely different music on the other side, right? And New York City was a place that was home to me when I was in book publishing, and made kind of the turn into the software world while I was there during the whole .com era. Bounced around with the companies I worked for there, lived in Los Angeles for a while. And then made the turn and decided to prioritize family, and came out to a lovely place to raise our family, which is here in Portland, Oregon. And I've been living the dream for 20 years out here.
Yeah, I don't think you're leaving Portland anytime soon, are you?
Nah, not anytime soon here. And it does kind of fit in, this part of my story leads into when I got out here and did get a job, got an MBA at the local university, got a job afterwards. A job ended pretty quickly because we were in the middle of a recession. And so, I was unemployed for a while and did the thing that you do, which is, you print up little business cards that say consultant, and you hand them out. And at the time I was PTA president at my kid's school, very involved in his education, very involved in that particular school community. I was PTA president for a couple of years there. And in a discussion with our local schools foundation, it happened to slip that there were a couple of guys in town that had written some software is my putative business here, had written some software to help produce fundraising events, auctions at schools, live auctions, silent auctions, that kind of thing. Went and talked to them. They figured out I had some software sales experience, which they did not. And we decided to start a company. And so we've been kind of doing that for about 20 years, helping grassroots nonprofit organizations, many of them associated with schools, but not exclusively, plan, manage, and run fundraising events.
Yeah, in fundraising events, I've never been that close to the planning, or actually I've been to some as a
As a guest.
As a guest, yes. Thank you for helping me with the terminology. And I've never thought too deeply about it, but you made the point to me just before we started recording, and you had shared that last week as well. Like, the dynamic has changed for the smaller nonprofits and how they think about sustaining themselves financially. So can you share that?
Yeah. One of the things that I think that all charities, all nonprofits need to be thinking about this year, I think they need to reevaluate the place that events have in their fundraising mix. Schools, churches, Young Life chapters, local sports leagues, these kind of organizations know how to run events as a profitable fundraiser. However, it sort of seems like once you get to be at a larger, more professional charity with more high-end talent, fundraising talent, events get treated as more second-tier fundraising. And whereas that's, okay, that's fine. That's part of the market dynamic that's out there. I think in 2025, things are shifting a lot. We have a lot of pressure on the entire system of nonprofit fundraising right now due to suspension, cancellation, and review of many federal grants that go out to nonprofits. It's been happening since the beginning of the year. A lot of nonprofits are kind of on shaky footing as a result. And okay, yeah, they can go to their main donor database and they can go to their private foundations in the community and try to appeal for funds there to make up the difference. But that's putting a lot of strain on those sources of funding, which were already being asked to contribute to the health of the entire charity ecosystem there. So in this case, I think, if you've always considered events to be something that you do only if you have to for fundraising at your nonprofit, take a page from the schools, take a look at it, see if you can do one of these things, run it profitably, and see if it can make up some of the shortfall. It's not going to make up all of it. Federal grants are responsible for a whole lot of money in the nonprofit ecosphere, but it can make up for some.
Well, give me a sense of how much money prior to 2025 was coming from the federal government versus maybe local and state government versus private sources. Do you have a breakdown?
I do not have the official breakdowns on those numbers, but it's going to be asymmetrical across the universe of nonprofits. There are some that are far more dependent upon grants than others are. But even for those organizations, which are the first ones that are going to be really hit here, they're going to turn to the next similar source to help make that up. And those are the private foundations. And I don't know about you, but I monitor a lot of the chatter about private foundations. It's kind of an occupational hazard, I suppose. And a lot of them are feeling the strain. They're feeling a lot of strain. We had an op-ed come out here in Portland a couple of weeks ago from one of the big local private foundations saying there are too many nonprofits. You guys need to consolidate. We can't fund you all.
Wow.
So yeah, this is starting to hit. And most nonprofits don't have a huge runway in the bank, especially the community-based ones, right? They're not necessarily living month to month per se, but they might not have any more than 8 or 9 months worth of operating capital in the bank. So disruptions, even to those smaller groups, even if they're small disruptions, are going to hit them pretty hard. So
yeah, and the idea of putting the smaller nonprofits together, let's say you combine 5 into 1, you do become more efficient. You do enjoy economies of scale improvements, and so a dollar will go a little bit farther with the larger entity. But the 5 folks that founded and probably lead those nonprofits, you're breaking their spirit to ask them to get together.
There's another thing though. In addition to the fact that there are many of these little charities out there that probably could combine for some efficiencies, and there are models like that out there. There's the model of fiscal sponsorship for small charities. That's all out there. But when you pick off the little guys like that, what you're generally not giving enough credit to is that the little guys are serving the little niches. There are going to be twists and turns. There are going to be specific pockets in a community that, if you have to prioritize the programs at a larger nonprofit, those may not fit the criteria quite as well. It tends to be the littler guys that go out and find those underserved bits within the underserved bits, which is, everybody that all nonprofits tend to serve.
Yeah, it's a great point. I've talked to a couple of nonprofit leaders the last few weeks, and one of them in particular is so niche that if you combine it with anything else, you lose the purpose and the meaning of that nonprofit.
You lose the purpose and the meaning of it. Now, so like I say, there's a model out there that called fiscal sponsorship that says, let us take all of your office-y stuff and we'll do all of the office-y stuff for you. And you can bring your own program delivery folks and you can fundraise for your program delivery. And we'll take care of accounting and taxes and keeping your email going and all of that kind of stuff. I like that model, and I think that there's a lot of reason to encourage that kind of consolidation. But there is no doubt about the fact that when you encourage that consolidation, you are decreasing the richness of the services you can provide.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm guessing some of the events that, when you say events, you're talking about things like silent auctions. You're talking about parties where people pay maybe more than they would normally to go to a gathering like that. What
charity
else?
Golf tournament. A charity golf tournament falls into this. If you want to do a trivia night somewhere. Generally, if you're asking a whole bunch of people to concentrate together, pay attention to one person asking them for money in whatever method you choose to use, and you're collecting that money that night, that's something that we have become really, really good at helping organizations do. And there's a lot of different formats for it, but certainly the classic event that we just love to help over and over and over again is an elementary school PTA that wants to put on a little online silent auction, and then they want to have a party, and at the party they want to do a little live auction, and they want to have a special appeal and maybe a raffle and things like that. And those work fantastic for so many of the community-based groups we work with, because they are community builders and community reinforcing events as well as fundraisers. But there's a lot of different formats for them.
Tell me more about what your company specifically does for nonprofits.
Yeah, we're a software company. So at the end of the day, we have a product. It's a software product. It's web-based, so you can, you access it from your browser, and it connects your entire team that's planning the event together, helps sell tickets, catalog all of your items, produce all of your merchandising collateral, and that's all what it does in advance, along with payment processing. Then on the night of the event, it helps you manage all of your guests, move them through the event, allow them opportunities to make their contributions, then collect the money for those contributions and send them on their way while they're still happy at the end of the night.
So sort of a before a meal and then soup to nuts for the meal.
It is. It's an integrated system there, and we really do find that has a lot of benefits. If you're selling your tickets and that's the start of a guest's data path through your entire system, a lot easier there. So yeah, it's soup to nuts. We like to start working with groups a few months in advance, although you don't always get that sometimes. Sometimes you get a couple of weeks, sometimes you get 3 days. And we're good at all of it, but we can help groups put on these events. And a thing to emphasize here is that as you can kind of tell from some of the way that I've been talking about events in America, fundraising events in America in 2025, a lot of the places where fundraising events are really, really most impactful are in community-based organizations, and many of those are going to be volunteer-driven or volunteer run. In the case of something like a PTA, that's all volunteers, 100%. And so you can count on the fact that the person who's going to be putting the fundraising event on, 9 times out of 10, they have no experience doing anything like it at all. So you have to, when you're in my position, and we're going to build a product for somebody to use, we really have to think about, okay, how can somebody who just hit the ground running with something that they don't know how to use. And they may not even know quite what they're doing, and they need to figure that out. And that's great. That's all fine. We love those people.
Roger, there are a lot of people around my age. I'm in my mid-50s who don't appreciate technology, but they want to do good things in their community or good things in the broader world. And then certainly there are a much higher percentage of people older than me that really don't understand technology. How do you overcome that challenge of people not intentionally being Luddites, but effectively they really haven't gravitated to technology, but what your software provides would be amazing for them. So how do you overcome that?
I'm going to push back on you. I'm going to say that's a false narrative, and you should stop repeating it. Okay.
Nice.
Okay. I'm older than you are. I'm 59, and I have no problem using any particular technology. And I know many, many, many of us who do. I think whether you're a Luddite or not has got the loosest possible coupling to how old you are. There's some relationship there, but I generally say that I don't look down on people my age or better, and I don't tell them that they can't use software. It's my job to make software that they can use.
Okay. Are you customizing?
And I'm good at it.
Are you customizing each time for each nonprofit?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the software can be customized each time, and we've got not only a piece of software that they're going to use, but we've got all of the training on how to use it, and we've got all of the support on how to use it. It's multimodal, so I've got videos, I've got live support, I've got for people who just need to talk to somebody, got it all out there. And furthermore, we don't just teach people how to use our software. You mentioned earlier you had been to a couple of auctions or a couple of fundraising events as a guest, but it's not really something that you were, particularly tuned into beforehand. That's not surprising at all. Most people in the world aren't, but those of us in the tribe, those of us who get involved with these kind of things and figure that we got a talent for it, do tend to accumulate a lot of knowledge on how to do these things. And so we're a teaching resource on how to run a fundraising auction, not just with our software, but how to do the thing, what it's all about, why it works.
Yeah. By the way, I love your phrasing, my age or better. I'm going to start using that. I also appreciate the pushback. I should not generalize about ages because you're right. There are plenty of 56-year-olds that are amazing with technology, and of course, I do know a few folks that are not so amazing at my age with technology. But
I know some 20-year-olds who are hopeless. So
I don't know any of those. I have 3 young adult children, and they were born with it in their hands. I don't know how those 20-year-olds you're referring to didn't pick up technology because it's
they can pick up the things that they know really, really, really well. But I know some that struggle to learn how to use business software.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. All right. So if I just started a nonprofit.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure things out. I'm now a year into my journey. I've had some success, but I want more. Mm-hmm. And I engage you. Tell me what that engagement is like, and how much things, generally speaking, how pricing works. Not how much you charge, but how that pricing works for folks.
For you, if you're a year in, I've got a special pricing schedule for you. It's a variable cost where basically you pay me nothing to use the software until your event is finished, and then I take a small percentage of what you raised. This is great if you're making less than, say, $38,000. If you're making more than that, I've got flat fee options that do not take a percentage of what you raise. So that's something that's a little bit unusual in our business. But the lack of what are called performance fees. So then we set you up with the software. We tell you how to engage your audience. I've got a free ebook on how to recruit a team of people to help you from your community. And I'm going to give you job descriptions, and I'm going to send you out to recruit those people. Then you're going to give them jobs, and they're going to go out and do their jobs. And they're going to each be able to interface with the software from their own home and set things up. We have training webinars, 3 of them that we suggest every customer go through at different points in the journey. There's one for when you're just starting out, one from when you're about a month out from your event, and one from you should attend the week of your event. And we'll help you get all set up, and we hold your hand all the way through it. Now, we don't send people out there, but we're available on the phone for you up until I think 11 p.m. Pacific time on the night you're running your event. So it works out.
Wow. So if you're for the East Coasters, you're up until 2 a.m. supporting their event.
Heck yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's great. And by the way, I really appreciate your pricing. And the older I get, the idea of trying to take money from other people just to take money, like you're giving them fair market pricing. Like,
I really believe in the concept of enough.
yeah.
You know, I need to make some money. I need to pay my programmers. I need to eat. But I'm going to charge enough to do those things. And then I can stop, really. Because one of the things about selling to volunteer-driven, small nonprofit organizations is that this lets me then, as long as I believe that I believe in enough, this lets me then also be their advocate in the pricing discussion because they don't have one. I used to sell to Fortune 500 companies and they're, let me throw you all the craziest misdirection I can throw you. You've got a lawyer on staff, they'll figure it out, But you can't do that with a PTA, for God's sakes. You just can't. Not if you want to sleep at night, and I do. So, okay, as long as I'm willing to say, I need to make this much, and I know what that is, then I can design things, and it's like we can go out and we can share the risk, we can share the ride, and on we go.
Well, and I'll also say about your pricing and this concept of enough. These are people that you're supporting that are just trying to put goodness into the world.
Absolutely.
Now, there are people trying to make money off of them too, though.
Okay. Having said that, I do need to say one thing. We're willing to work with all legal 501c3 nonprofits.
Is there
I prefer working with the ones that do good in the world, but we're willing to at least have a conversation with the others.
Fair enough. Is there such a thing as a nonprofit that's too big for you guys?
No, not really. Not one that's too big, but we don't aim for the big ones. I'm perfectly happy to lose the American Red Cross to one of my competitors. That's fine. You go take them. Take that end of the market there. I'll handle the bulky end of the market. I'll handle the 75% of fundraising events that are being put on by smaller organizations because there's more business there.
Yeah. And I think it's probably more fun too.
It is. I love my customers. I love these people. They're crazy, but I love them. And they are all, I am amazed on a daily basis what kind of organizations we discover that are out there, and it's great. There are diseases I've never, ever heard of and are horrifying that have whole groups devoted to eradicating them. I'm happy they're out there.
Yeah, I am too. In fact, one of the nonprofits I talked to recently, she said, hey, we're going to fit into this very rare, super complex set of medical challenges because in our local area that didn't exist.
Yep.
And so we're going to fill that void. And there are voids out there that are not being filled. It's not because there aren't enough good people in the world. It's just because a lot of good people don't know exactly what to do. So if I wanted to connect with you, what's the best way for me to connect if I want to improve my fundraising?
Thank you. Our website is www.schoolauction.net. Auction is singular, and it's .net, not a .com. And then if you want to get a hold of me, my email address is roger@schoolauction.net.
I love it.
Easy.
All right, Roger, I'm going to jump around here. How old were you when you moved to New York?
21.
All right, so you did the school thing, high school and college in Texas?
I did. I moved after I graduated from Trinity University in San Antonio.
Okay, you have to tell me what the first, 2-6 months were like in New York after having spent 21 years in Texas.
Well, one of the things that people who are not from Texas don't necessarily get is how big the Texas diaspora is. You find Texans everywhere, and we know that. So, the first couple of months, I hung out with a couple of other Texans a lot, and we assimilated together. But I wound up really loving living in New York. I really got a kick out of the energy. I got a kick out of the need to put your game face on and get in the game and slog through it. It all just kind of worked for me. And I wanted to be in book publishing. I made it. And that was where it was happening. So I loved being in New York. It's great. That's not to say that I didn't, go home many, many, many times to Dallas and think, wait, it's so much easier to park here.
Well, and you're being discouraged from owning a car living in New York too.
Yeah, you are.
I mean, just to cross a bridge costs $100.
Practically.
Yeah. Were you in Manhattan?
I spent most of my time living in Brooklyn.
Okay,
in
nice.
Brownstone, Brooklyn. Yeah.
What was Brooklyn like back then?
So this is late 80s and through to 2001. Brownstone, Brooklyn was really nice. It had, Park Slope had really been cleaned up. Cobble Hill was beautiful, and I lived in Brooklyn Heights for a while, which was spectacularly well taken care of. At that point, Brooklyn Heights was a community that a lot of Wall Streeters wanted to live in because it was just across the bridge, really easy to get to Wall Street. And so it was nice and a beautiful, beautiful neighborhood. I will say that I lived in Brooklyn Heights a couple of years after the Huxtables did.
Did they actually film in Brooklyn? Oh, I had no idea.
The exteriors were all filmed in Brooklyn. Yeah, it was beautiful. It's such a beautiful neighborhood.
That's absolutely beautiful. Yeah, in my recollection, New York was a pretty rough place in the 70s and into the early, maybe even mid 80s, but Brooklyn really went through a renaissance around the time you were living there.
Yeah, no, it absolutely did. I got to New York on the tail end of the bad days. So in the late 80s, there were still about half the subways needed to be cleaned. They eventually got that turned around, and it was amazing. And they really crawled out of, the malaise that had been, the late 70s and early 80s in New York. And then, things just flourished while I was there. That was when we had the .com boom and, all of that. And riding that wave was kind of fun.
Yeah, well, you said you were there doing audio books before audiobooks were really a thing, right?
Not audiobooks, electronic books.
Sorry.
So now we all have a Kindle, right? And you can read a book on a screen, and it's a reasonable experience. About 10 years before the Kindle, I worked for a company that was trying to make electronic books. And there wasn't quite the hardware available. There were some prototypes and some things that worked pretty well. So we developed it for laptops, like you would read a book on a laptop. And the world looked at it and said, nice try, and moved on. Like, not interested yet. It took until the Kindle, the development of the Kindle, before they really, really got it right. But I was in on a wave of electronic books that never quite happened.
Yeah, sorry, my memory is not perfect. Clearly, you clearly said electronic book when we spoke last.
I'm at that point in my life where I don't care. It's fine. We're all having memory lapses right now. It's totally. You forgive mine, I'll forgive yours.
Deal. I'm guessing, and you tell me because you were in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Did the electronic book on a computer not work because it didn't have the feel and look and the size of a book like a Kindle maybe did?
I think that's probably 40% of it. I think that was a huge obstacle. Most people, didn't necessarily want to pick up their laptop and take it into bed with them to read. I think another part of it was that this was actually prior to the commercial internet getting going. This was prior to the release of the Netscape Navigator browser. And that happened roughly in the 1990, I think. We were doing this a little bit before that. And so people weren't as used to the idea of reading on a screen. They weren't reading websites yet. The web existed. The web had existed since the 1960s, so I never make that mistake. But the commercial web was not the internet had existed. The commercial web didn't really get going until, the mid 90s. And we'd been trying to do electronic books before that. I think the world needed to be softened up a little bit too. So.
Yeah, makes sense. There's still you're not in electronic books or Kindle or anything like that these days. There's something the tactile nature of actually reading a physical book is appealing to a lot of people that are well read. So there's that too.
I tell you, when I used to work in the book publishing industry, one of my favorite times is when we'd get the first copies of a new book that we'd worked on. They hit the office, and everybody did the same thing. You picked it up and you cracked it open somewhere in the middle, and you put your nose down in it, and you just smelled the fresh new book. And that was an experience I have never ever let slip from my grasp.
Similar to the smell of a new car.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I can smell that smell now just thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you probably have a similar memory. And by the way, smell I think is really, really powerful in terms of memory triggering or being able to remember things. All right. So the idea of it, I think you're downplaying growing up in Texas a little bit. Look, it is part of the Bible Belt. It was Dallas, you said you grew up in?
Okay, so I grew up in Dallas in the mid 70s. We still could elect Democrats as governors down in Texas then. Okay, that was a point in time where Texas was transitioning from being blue dog Democrat into the first flourishes of red Republican. It was a funkier place in the 70s. It was definitely a funkier place. And I grew up in Dallas, which is a place nobody would ever accuse of being funky. But I went to school down in South Texas, and it was a melting pot. It was a great mixed place there. Yeah, there's an ethic. Yes, there's an aesthetic. And I love those parts about Texas, you know. I don't know that I want to go back and live there right now. And I understand where you're going with the characterization, and I don't dispute it. But things evolve, and Texas once upon a time was, a slightly different place than it is now.
Yeah, I imagine there's some pretty integrated with lots of open thinking and discussions and a robust environment that exists certainly in Austin, Texas. I imagine there are little pockets in San Antonio and Houston that have the same feel, and I guess Dallas probably does too, even though my impression of Dallas these days is not so much. But
Dallas is a banking city.
Yeah. This is just, let's go make as much money as humanly possible through banking.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're good at it.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, it's a great point how places over decades can change pretty significantly. And
yeah, I was in Texas when we elected Ann Richards as governor, and through the entire time she was governor, and boy, that was a fun time. She was a fun, feisty Democratic governor there.
She was nationally known. Everybody knew about Ann Richards. Yeah. You said blue dog Democrat. I don't want to get into a big political thing here, but what's the difference between a blue dog and a yellow dog Democrat? Because by the way, I hear both terms from Texans typically.
Wow, yellow dog Democrat, I'm not entirely sure about. That's kind of a new one for me. But the blue dog Democrat was always a little more conservative socially, although concerned with the poor. The kind of Democrat that wasn't necessarily out on the fringes. Well, a lot of times they were on the fringes of things like civil rights, but probably the more conservative end of the Democratic Party at that point.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm going to pivot to Portland real quickly.
Sure.
Portland seems to be the place that likes to be the first geographical area or city that wants to try things first. And that can be amazing and brutal depending on what you're talking about.
It can be amazing and it can be brutal. I mean, this city, I think, in my opinion, got the idea of the urban growth boundary perfect. It got, it did things like the city took a major highway and rerouted it out of the center of the city because they wanted to put a park there. Who does that? Right? And for all of those reasons, I love Portland. And there's, it's where young people go to retire and all of that and all of the funny stuff that's out there. There's no doubt about the fact that Portland tries some things sometimes that backfire on us spectacularly.
Where does that spirit come from? And maybe that's not an answerable question, but Portland is, I mean, every city's unique in its own way, but Portland really stands out with this. Hey, let's try to be better for our fellow man.
Let me put it this way. I think Portland as a community has got an extraordinarily high tolerance for and even encourages people who want to picture the world in a progressive way, that we're getting better and better, or we have the potential to get better and better, and we should seize that potential and get better and better. Portland tolerates those people really, really, really well, and it welcomes them into the city. And so I think it's kind of self-reinforcing. Like we got on a roll in the 70s and did some things like the bottle bill and, rerouting the highway. I say we, but I was nowhere near Portland at that point. I barely knew what Oregon was. But the city did those things, and that welcomed in a certain crowd of people. And then it just became a friendlier environment. And somewhere along the way, we got a kind of belligerent about being that friendly. We kind of got belligerent about, yes, this is, go ahead, call us the People's Republic of Portland. We're here for it, bring it on. And that can be a little tedious. We certainly have tried a lot of things with regards to homeless management, most of which haven't worked, and it can be tiring at times, but I'd also rather live here than anywhere else. So,
yeah, the homeless question, I don't think any part of this country has an answer for it.
No.
And I think more progressive leaning folks would say, hey, we should not put them in 9x12 rooms in some institution. Like, that's the wrong answer as well. And providing handouts is maybe part of the answer, but not the full answer. I've talked to, I don't know, 2 or 3 nonprofits recently that are focused on people that are in that situation. And it is a very, very complicated thing to solve.
One of the things that gets me these days is that we have a whole lot of technocrats that are really, really worried about population collapse. That it's happening in South Korea, it's happening in Japan. We're not going to have enough young people to take care of the old people. Elon Musk wants us all to have 12 children, right? And, and get out there and make more babies. And when we have some perfectly good people here that we could rehabilitate and use, why do we not care about, using the resource we've already got here? Some people that are already built,
Yeah, I think the folks that are out there trying to figure out how to rehabilitate those, they're on the right side of this. The ones that are dismissing the humanity of those people or humanity in general, they're on the wrong side.
I think so too.
Yeah. I have never been to Portland. I've been to Oregon technically, but I don't think it really counts. Let me ask you a fun question. If you don't spend the night in a location, have you really been there? Let me give you an example.
Well, okay, so clarifying question.
Yeah.
By not spend the night, do you mean not spend any hours, not spend an overnight anywhere in the city? Or do you just mean didn't check into a hotel, but I slept on a bench in the airport?
No, what I mean is, well, I'll give you 2 examples, especially since you said airport. If I just had a layover in an airport and then left the state and the city right away, or I just drove through.
Just drove through means that you can at least talk about what it looked like. Okay. So I think that counts as having been there. A layover in the airport, I'm going to say that it's an acceptable lie for you to say that you've been there.
But you shouldn't feel good about it.
Well, if you need it for some circumstance, like somebody's saying like, oh, have you ever been to Portland? And you just want to say,
Well, all right. So you tell me that you'll be my perfect judge since you live in Oregon. You're going to be the decider here. I was out in Boise. Boise, I think, is maybe 2 hours away from the Oregon state line.
Yeah, it's a little bit less, but yeah.
Okay.
Beautiful city. Gorgeous city.
There were 3 of us. We drove to the border. We found a sign that had the word Oregon on it, took a picture of it, and then went back to Boise.
Yeah, you were in Idaho. Sorry. Yeah, that doesn't count.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah. I think, there is the very real possibility that the place that you stood and took that picture might become part of Idaho. The people
Wow.
in the eastern part of the state are debating and talking, and have been doing so for many, many years, about seceding from the state of Oregon and joining the state of Idaho. It's called the Greater Idaho Movement. Really interesting debate there. I kind of wonder how that would work with legislatures. Like, the Oregon state legislature might just be crazy enough to say go, but would the Idaho state legislature say come in? I don't know. What happens then? What if they're stranded?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I'll say this as an East Coast guy. And of course, you lived on the East Coast for a good while. The idea that state lines can move around depending on whatever's happening in those regions. Like I've heard, I've never been part of a debate, but I've heard that there's some in California that think there's a North California, a Central California, and a Southern California, and those should be three independent states from each other. And I'm like, I think we should just be settled with what we got and move on. But that's very not progressive, right?
I think that there's arguments all over the place on, determinism, et cetera, who should be allowed to make, decisions for what size group, whatever. But I don't think humanity stays put long enough to make any of that work.
Yeah.
I think that communities evolve with such inevitability that those cultural lines are a poor thing to use to draw political lines.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right. Let's say I plan a trip to Portland, but I don't have a clue what to do. I'm not going to do any research online. I'm going to just ask Roger, hey, Roger, what are the three things I absolutely have to do when I visit Portland?
You have to go to Powell's. You have to go to Powell's Books, the one on Burnside. We got 5 or 6 of them, but you go to the one on Burnside and plan to spend 4 or 5 hours there hunting books down. It's the most wonderful book buying experience in the country.
Describe it. Please describe it at a high level.
It is a bookstore it is a massive, massive bookstore. It's got to be a minimum of 20,000 square feet spread out amongst 4 or 5 connected buildings and 3 or 4 floors, and all kind of a discombobulated arrangement. Carries new and used books, and you can find whatever you want to find in Powell's. You can absolutely find whatever you want to find, and you'll get lost. The store is designed for you to actually get physically lost in. That is a common thing. You're expected to be lost at some point. You're expected to ask somebody like, help, where's my car? I don't know where the door is. It's a great experience. It's wonderful. You need to eat high-end donuts. Now, this is a donut town here. This is a donut town that rivals Boston. Actually, it's better than Boston. You got to have donuts here. And people who don't know Portland terribly well, but who read the magazines and what have you, will tell you to go to a place called Voodoo Donuts. You probably should. There are going to be people on your flight home that are going to have a pink box of donuts from Voodoo Donuts. However, they're far from the best donuts in town. When you get out here, you call me to see who's currently on top. But at the moment, it's Blue Star. And Blue Star is a really, really great donut. My local is Sesame Donuts, and I am partial to them as well. But we take donuts seriously, and you should too while you're out here.
So hold on. Before you go to number 3, Roger, you have to describe when you assess a donut. Is it purely based on taste? Is it taste plus texture? Is it what the donut looks like before you take a bite? Tell me how you think about judging a donut.
All of those 3 plus when was it made? Preferably in the last 10 minutes. Thank you very much. That's what I'd like. And I am one who says, like, if you're going to play around with flavors in your donut, great. I'm in favor of that. Just make sure they work. Make sure those flavors work together. I'm kind of partial to filled donuts, but I'm also very partial to buttermilk. That's my vanilla go-to standard. But variety of textures. I want to see how crisp the sugar coat is on the outside. It needs to crackle a little bit for me. And then there's a cultural experience. When I'm standing in that place buying that donut, can I be anywhere else? Is it a flippin' Dunkin'? If so, I have no idea where I am in the world.
Yeah, you shouldn't go with a chain. especially if you're going to Portland. Sounds like.
Exactly.
Are there Dunkins in Portland?
There's few.
Why would anybody buy into a Dunkin' franchise in Portland if it's such a big donut scene?
Well, okay. So the other side of this is that if you're going to do what I'm telling you to do here when you're visiting, you're going to spend money on a donut that you wouldn't spend on a donut normally. That's vacation money you're spending on a donut. You're spending $5 on a donut, for God's sake. You know, so sometimes you don't have the budget.
Fair enough. And then what's number 3?
Oh, number 3 could be any of a number of things. I'm going to go out to visit the Columbia River Gorge. Drive the gorge, see Multnomah Falls, see the other waterfalls. The other waterfalls can be absolutely much more accessible and easy to get to. And the drive is amazing. The drive to and back is the thing that, you know, will prompt the thought, wow, there are people who get to live here like all year.
Yeah,
we do. It's awesome. Come join us.
Yeah, the pictures I've seen and what I've heard people that have either lived there or visited there, they say it's one of the most gorgeous places on earth.
It is a visually spectacular place to live. I will never live in another place more beautiful than this.
And you're not leaving?
Nah, I'm not leaving.
That bookstore that you mentioned, how often do you go there?
I'm pretty well stocked, but I still go probably 4 or 5 times a year.
All right, so I release the audio for this. I typically don't release the video, and by typically not releasing, I mean I've like 5 times out of 340 episodes. Can you describe the wall behind you for our listeners?
Yeah, it's about 10 feet long. It's about 8.5 feet tall, solid wood bookcases stuffed to the gills. Mostly hardcovers from my days in publishing, but loads and loads of paperbacks too. And various electronic garbage poking out here and there.
What percentage?
I have my copy right here where my finger is. That is the last edition of the baseball encyclopedia that was ever published. I love that. This book right here just got published and it was written by a member of my staff, or she used to be on my staff before she quit to become a full-time author. And it's amazing. And it's called American Sky by Carolyn. What's Carolyn's last name on the book? Dasher. Yeah, I got to make sure I use the right last name for it. Carolyn Dasher. Go out and buy her book. It's amazing.
I love a couple things. One, I didn't realize they stopped making the baseball encyclopedia. That's a shame.
The internet killed it.
What year?
This one was, I want to say it was like 94. And after that, it just wasn't, it was just obvious that was a really expensive book to produce. And, the unit cost on printing one of those suckers was above $30, I think, at the time. So, they didn't mind getting out of the business of doing it, I don't think.
Yeah, that's really pricey per unit. That's wild.
Yeah, it's massive.
For our listeners, when you are trying to point to things when you're on camera, you lose your sense, at least I do, of what's right and left. Roger is a near perfect pointer to things behind him on camera. Is that from a lot of practice, or are you just naturally good at it? From a lot of practice. Okay.
It's from practice. I actually practice that. I sit there and I do. It does. I do a lot of talking to prospective customers, and I do demos with them, and they're almost always Zoom these days. And I think this is a more interesting background than any of the default backgrounds you ever get. I think it's just visually more interesting. So,
absolutely.
It provokes a lot of conversations. I also have a copy. Let me see if I can identify it here. Oh, it's next to Carolyn's book. It's right there. That is a first edition of the Satanic Verses, which is a book that was published by Viking Penguin right after I started working there.
I know nothing about the book. I mean, I've heard of the title, but I have not read the book. But the title awesome. Is an attention getter.
Yeah, well, and it got the author of the book, Salman Rushdie. It earned him a fatwa from the Ayatollah at that time.
Oh, that's why I've heard of it.
That's that whole story. And we had to clear out the offices 23 times when I worked there for bomb threats.
Wow.
Yeah, because we had published the book.
So it wasn't just Rusty that was being gutsy. It was your publishing company.
Oh yeah. It's funny story about that. The first like 3 or 4 times when we had to empty the building, we all wound up standing on the sidewalk outside. And then after a little while, somebody noticed that and said, "Hey, this is a bad idea. If they want to kill you and you're all congregated right there on the sidewalk, they can just drive down the street." Yeah.
Yeah.
So then we got the rest of the day off whenever there was a bomb threat. Go home.
When you leave the building for a bomb threat, spread out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Go home.
Yeah.
Take the day off.
Go home's the best answer, probably. Yeah. All right. So I imagine you've run into a lot of really interesting and amazing nonprofits, smaller or maybe closer to medium size. You can mention the names if you want, but if you could share 2 or 3, just like I want you to tell me about 2 or 3 that you're like, oh my gosh, people are working on that. That's amazing. It could be a very small town sort of thing, or it could be in the southeast quadrant of Pittsburgh or whatever.
Yeah, no, there is. Let's go take a look and troll through some good names here. I love organizations we've worked with for many years. Include things like Stop Children's Cancer. We've worked with loads and loads of what we tend to call. Sorry, this is exposing a little too much. I shouldn't say this. We tend to call them disease of the week groups.
Yes.
One of my favorite was the Tuberous Sclerosis Society. This is a horrific disease that affects very few people. But if you get it, you're really glad that this society exists and funds medical research into rare diseases like that. Or into that particular rare disease. Loads of those. But honestly, my most important customers are often very anonymous. They're very much blended into their community. They're the churches, they're the schools, they're the humane societies, they're the food pantries, maybe a local museum. But generally, they are the kinds of workaday, blue-collar nonprofits that are embedded deeply into a particular local community.
So deeply that they are taken for granted, I imagine, by a lot of folks.
They are, and that's one of the reasons why I'm going to point them out. I want to talk about them because those are the customers that jazz me because they've been neglected by others. Let's go out and shine a spotlight on this. I worked with a group for many years that was a group of nurses, and they had been employed by one of the local hospital systems, and their unit took care of medically fragile children. So kids that can't exist outside of a wheelchair or a breathing apparatus or something like that. And this group of nurses had been dedicated to helping, medically fragile kids. And then the hospital pulled all funding for the unit, and they decided to band together and start a local unit to take care of those same kids. Couldn't be prouder of helping a group like that. Do you know them? No, you don't know them. Are they national? No, they're not national. They're a group of nurses who got together and said, we're not going to lose this service in our community. We're going to find another way to provide it.
All of those nurses are amazing people, and I'd love to meet all of them because they are so caring and empathetic and nurturing and persevere. Just an amazing set of folks. And I'm going to make this quick comment. I've seen a few doctors in my life. Some doctors have a decent personality, but a lot of them do not.
Yeah,
nurses almost always have a good personality. It's why
they're there to backfill for the doctors.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Fair enough. All right, you mentioned you led a PTA when your son was in school. Do you have I'm not looking for a good or bad story, but just an interesting or a fun story from your time as the PTA president.
Well, we started some things that we were really proud of there. We started some programs. There was a playground revision that we did while we were there, and that was something that I was proud of. Most of what I got out of it personally, in addition to supporting my son and his education, which, okay, we'll put that at the top. That was the main benefit to me. But the secondary benefit was largely social. It was a group of people that I really adored hanging out with, really loved working on things with. We're a bunch of Portland do-gooders there, and that was awesome for me. I will say we were very lucky. There was a PTA at an adjacent school that during the time I was at our school, They had an embezzlement scandal. Their PTA treasurer went rogue. You've been through those things before. We did pitch in to help them dig out of that, a little bit.
Yeah, I don't understand people that are in an organization that is clearly their mission is to do good for parts of the rest of the world, or maybe in their own way for the whole world, and then you're stealing. It just doesn't make sense. Doesn't make any sense. Anyway, all right. Anything that we should put out to the world in this podcast that we have not talked about, Roger?
Oh my God, we've talked about everything. We've been on this for an hour now. Okay. Now, the thing that I really want to emphasize out in the world is that if there's anybody at a nonprofit that does not do a fundraising event, please think about it. Please think about an event, adding an event in, because they can be profitable. They can make you money. They can help you stay afloat. Are they going to replace all your federal grants? They're not, but they can. And you don't have to run your event with me, although I'm here and you can call me and all of that. That's great. But consider adding fundraising events back to the mix, because they can help.
Awesome. Well, Roger, I feel like I'm a better person now that I've met you and we've had a chance to talk for almost an hour.
I feel the same.
And I've learned things about Portland that I did not expect to learn tonight. So I'm happy that. Yeah. The funny thing is, and I didn't say this while you were talking about donuts, I've never really been a donut guy. And I feel bad saying that to somebody who lives in Portland, but not really a donut guy.
Well, hey, crappy donuts are terrible. I don't want a stale donut. And, and honestly, until until I got to New York, I hadn't ever had anything as good as a Krispy Kreme.
Mm.
And Krispy Kreme is now my absolute floor. That's below where I do not go below Krispy Kreme. But it was until I got to New York that I had anything that good. It wasn't until I got to Portland that I realized, like, oh my goodness, this could actually become a problem here.
I have two amazing stories I'm going to tell you about Krispy Kreme right after I stop the recording, because I don't want them to be recorded.
I can't wait.
And they're both quick. All right, okay. Roger, thanks for doing this. And
anybody watching the podcast who wants to know the story, call me.
That's fine. You're going to do it word of mouth. That's great. Thanks, Roger.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also really appreciate if you'd rate and review us. You can find us at scodupodcast.com.